Well, good evening, everybody. Well, it's evening when I'm recording this, but hello and welcome back to Rob Corona's Photoshop for the Graphic Arts course. I'm Robert Vernon, your instructor, and tonight we are going to learn all about resolution. Probably more than you want to know. It's a subject I love. I'm a pixel nerd. Really understanding the nuts and bolts of what happens from image acquisition all the way through image manipulation and output. It's a great topic. Um, there's a huge lack of understanding. In fact, I think this subject is the least understood subject of all that I run into. Even professionals have been working in the field for years, really have a lack of understanding about what input and output resolution is and what different types of output require. But we're going to cover all of that tonight. So welcome, and you might want to take some notes. You probably want to refer back to this episode. It's going to be a lot of facts. It's a little on the dry side unless you're a pixel nerd like me, but it is very exciting. So I will make it as exciting as possible. There is some math involved, but let's dive in. All right, we're going to talk about resolution and the different types of it. There's input, there's output, the difference between DPI, PPI, what is device independence? What the heck is that, Robert? So let's dive right on in. And before we do, there was something from last week I left out. I wanted to just go over real quick, and that is the Kodak grayscale. The use of this grayscale in image processing, especially shooting fine art or any kind of static art, even if it's still life. If you can get this in the frame, it's such a great tool. Let me just show you. I'm going to drop down our info window here, right there, and we're going to take our little eyedropper tool. But if you look at right here at that white, that is a non-specular highlight. Look at that. There's M. There's your midtone, and up in here is where your blacks are. Okay, you got your control colors, you got your process colors, you got your complementary colors. Look at all that. Isn't that awesome? So if you shoot this with your art, you can use it as a reference point. So some of your art or photos or still lifes, they're not going to have any pure whites. They're not going to have any maybe exact midtones. But this chart gives that to you. It's available from B&H. A number of different photo sources, unique. I think they're about $50. Great thing to have. So I just wanted to cover that, so you have that in your tool belt. I left that off of last week's color correction module, so I wanted to cover that. Okay, that's out of the way. Let's get back to our slides. Okay. Warning, there is much confusion on this topic. I am not kidding. I'm telling you, very little is understood about this because there's all kinds of different terms and people come at it from maybe one perspective. A person comes at it from a video perspective or a monitor perspective. Another person comes at it from a scanning perspective. Another one comes at it from offset printing or projection or whatever their use is, and they don't have a broad knowledge of the topic. So I'm going to give you, as best I can, a very broad overview. As well, we're going to dive into some very important things. Again, there's a lot here. Please take notes. I just made my slides black and white to keep it super simple. We will be in Photoshop a little bit, not as much as last week. This is mostly kind of lecture, classroom type stuff, but it is very, very valuable, and I hope you get a lot out of it. Even the experts get this subject wrong. Absolutely, no kidding. So I'm hoping you guys, after you take this course, this module, will be experts and can set people straight. All right, what are pixels? When we say PPI, that's pixels per inch. Pixels are the building block of an image, building block of our video, building block of our monitors, building blocks of our TV set. They are picture elements. A pixel is short for picture element. Pixar. That's where Pixar comes from. Picture element. Building blocks of your images. A lot of people say DPI. It's actually, on the input side, it's PPI, which is pixels per inch. DPI is dots per inch, and that really is used for output when we're talking about output. So I say here in my notes, PPI is short for pixels per inch and used for describing input resolution. So we're talking input from video cameras, your phone, your video on your phone, your photos on your phone, your DSLR photos, scanners, your flatbeds, your drum scanners, whatever you have, wherever you're capturing images, right? We're dealing in pixels per inch. Wacom tablets, anything where you're taking stuff in is really pixels per inch. DPI is short for dots per inch. A lot of people use DPI for both input and output. I don't correct people, but it's really DPI is dots per inch, and that refers to the screening on printing devices like offset printing, inkjet printing, gravure, flexo. Almost everything uses dots, some kind of dots. If you take a magnifying glass and look at a printed piece, you will see those dots. And that is really the dots per inch we're talking about. And also refers to the imaging lasers, what kind of resolution they have when they're imaging the plates. Used to be film, but now it's just directly on the plates. So the higher the resolution, the more detailed and clear the image is, both on the input and the output side. So the question becomes, how do we know how much resolution we need? Because honestly, sometimes people give me files, no exaggeration, 2, 3, 4 gigabytes, not megabytes, gigabytes, and I only need, really, 50, 100 megs. People will give me, we do a lot of large stuff on Windows and also whatnot. I only need 100 PPI. I'm getting 300, 400 PPI. And again, when you double the resolution, you quadruple the file size. That's that old inverse square law, if you remember that from school. But you double the resolution, your file size goes up by 4. And honestly, the bigger the file, the longer it takes to process, opening it in Photoshop, cropping, whatever you're going to do, it just takes longer, costs more money to handle big files, costs more to store them. So really, it's important to have files big enough for what you need, but not so big that it takes forever to deal with them. Well, let's take a look at an image, and let's see if we can dive down in to an image and take a look at those pixels. All right. Okay. Well, there's an image, and yeah, that's actually a job I did. Those windows there, did, I think, 5 different storefronts in one day for Fashion Week in New York. Let's take a look. So we're going to, can you see it's falling apart? See that? Now we're looking at actual pixels. So that particular image is blown up 3,200%. But we're looking at the actual pixels of the image. That's what makes that. And it's hard to believe, right, when we look at that from a distance, that there's Kobe. She's actually the CEO of Visuals. My client, actually, a really nice lady. So we're looking at the picture elements, okay? Let's go back down. I'm using, just so you know, shortcuts, which Command or the Alt key and the plus and minus key. So that's minus, gets it back down where it's supposed to be. Now let's take a look at the image size. Look at that, 864 pixels, 648 pixels. So in Photoshop, under image, again, I was here under image, you can take a look and see what the resolution is. You can look at it in inches or pixels. We're talking pixels. Let's look at a pixel. So that tells us what's in that image. All right. So that's what pixels look like. You can go up to a monitor or a TV with a magnifying glass, and see the actual picture elements on your monitor very similarly. All right, back to the slide. Okay, so that's the difference between pixels per inch and dots per inch, and we just looked at what pixels actually look like. Okay. All right, so let's talk about resolution. Let's talk about input resolution. Input resolution is determined by the resolution of the CCD or CMOS chip in your camera and scanner. What are those, Robert? CCD stands for charged coupled device, and CMOS is basically charged metal oxide semiconductor. And both of them are used to capture images. The CMOS uses less energy. CCDs were first. CMOSs are later. And in your phone, your camera, your flatbed scanner is one of these types of chips that captures the images. It converts the light into an electrical impulse to create the image. And so each little pixel has got a spot on that chip. So the more pixels it can capture at a time, the higher the resolution. As you know, with cameras, the cameras we get now, oh my goodness, we're getting 64 meg files. You're talking 36, 60 megabit images. Incredible, crazy. The chips 20 years ago were maybe you get their 2K resolution. Now they're just like they're 60K, 100K. It's insane how good they've become. How good the cameras on our iPhones are. Oh my goodness, or our pixel phones. Crazy. Very sophisticated. The quality is phenomenal now. Back in the day, for scanning images, there was no cameras like that. 20 years ago, we used very high-end scanners, drum scanners. It cost like $135,000 each. I had 3 of them. And my whole business 25 years ago was scanning images. We'd scan 400, 500 images a week for our customers because there was no digital cameras, no flatbed scanners. But now, you know what? Capturing the images on your phone or your flatbed scanner at home, incredible quality. Not all CCDs are the same. Well, I should say the way they're used are not the same. Some camera manufacturers use interpolated pixels to yield high pixel counts. So, in other words, and we'll see it in Photoshop in a little bit, there is a process where we can increase the resolution of an image, and it's called interpolation. It's basically a program or a chip is trying to figure out what the logical step between 2 pixels would be as it's resed up. So it artificially, we're using math, creates a pixel that's not really there, but it creates a pixel, what it thinks should be there, and it increases the resolution that way. Well, the problem with that is it is not a crisp image. Sometimes it works incredibly well. Other times it works incredibly poorly. So some camera manufacturers use circuitry on board that interpolates the images. So what you're getting out of the camera is not the actual resolution of that chip. It's been jacked up artificially to increase the resolution. So when you start manipulating it, you'll start seeing some artifacts that you don't from other cameras. So the really good cameras don't do that. The cheaper ones do. I'm not sure about the phones. I don't know. But at any rate, not all CCDs are used the same. Some CCDs now are just crazy. I mean, some of the quality I'm seeing is just, it totally blows me away. And last point, most computer desktop scanners use interpolation of some sort. There's pictures. Upper left corner is CCD chip. So that's what the actual chip that captures the image looks like in your DSLR, your iPhone, your flatbed scanner. The machine on the upper right is a drum scanner. That was old school. And the images, transparencies anyway, were actually mounted in oil. We would put a thin layer of oil, top and bottom, and that would hide surface scratches, any imperfections in that transparency. And then that cylinder would spin at a very fast rate. And those machines used PMTs, photomultiplier tubes, very, very expensive, very sensitive to light. The beauty of the PMTs were incredible dynamic range. And to this day, if I wanted to carve into an image that has significant shadow detail, I want to carve that detail out, hold that detail, I would still look for someone with a drum scanner. They still make them. They're still the best, but the gap between a CCD or CMOS and a PMT has really closed. It really, you have to be a professional to be able to tell the difference. And you look at that scanner in the bottom left, that's an Epson 700. I've got that, one of those. To get the quality that you get off that scanner, I think that scanner maybe $800. I don't know, $800-900. 20 years ago, the flatbeds that were out that would approach that quality were $18,000. Now you can go order that on Amazon, $800. Oh my gosh, that Nikon right there, incredible camera, incredible quality. So, you know, what we can do today was unthinkable 20, 25 years ago. We're so fortunate. Now I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and we're actually going to res up an image, and we're going to use interpolation. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, but we're actually going to go back now. And let's go to a different image. Let's go to my buddy Nonito. That's Nonito Donaire, 4-time world champion. He really is a friend, and he looks tough, doesn't he? That guy's like the nicest guy in the world, and can sing and dance, and it's an incredible human being. Anyway, Nonito, we're going to use your image. We're going to interpolate you. Okay, so how do we tell how much resolution is in an image? Well, what I do is I open it in Photoshop. I go under Image to Image Size. And again, we got 528 by 396 pixels. You can see it right here and here. You can go change it to inches. Now, what I want you to realize is that this images are nothing but a bucket of pixels. We have a number of pixels. You could multiply 528 times 396, and you will get your total pixel count. We can redefine that. We can say, instead of 72 DPI, now I want you to see, I took off resample. We're going to go over that. I took off resample. If we resampled that, it's going to interpolate the pixels. It's going to introduce new artificial pixels. But for what I'm going to teach you right now, I don't want you to do that. But we're going to learn how to interpolate. But right now, resample is off. That box is unchecked. If I go and change my height to 4, I want you to see what happens to the resolution. I made the image smaller. I defined the image as smaller, and the resolution went up. Same amount of pixels. This 528 by 396 did not change. I'm going to go down to 2. Went to resolution of 198 pixels per inch. Same pixel count. Now, be aware, sometimes this will get set to pixels per centimeter. Just make sure you're in pixels per inch. Okay? So there you go. That we've redefined. If we save that image and brought it into a page layout program, it would come in height 2 inches, width 2.6. Okay? All right, let's go back to 72 pixels per inch. Okay? There we are. Now I'm going to interpolate that. I'm going to say, I want to res that up, and we're going to go to 200 pixels per inch. And you've got automatic, you've got preserve details 2, bicubic smoother, all these different options. Honestly, automatic works great. You can preserve the details if you want. It does help a little bit, but I'm going to interpolate that. Okay? Click OK. Now we have increased the resolution. I hope you can see that it's a little fuzzy, that we have some noise introduced. It's not, the gloves aren't smooth. So there's a price. There is a price to be paid. I'm going to undo that. If you want to do this, sometimes you have to. Sometimes you get an image from someone, you have to work with it. They don't have anything else, okay? There is a way we can reduce the noise. I'm going to reduce the noise by 5%. And I'm going to do this in steps. So I want to end up at 200, but I'm going to do it in steps of 10%. And that will give you the best quality. So I'm going to go from 72 to 79. I'm going to do it again. Now we're going to go, let's go to 88. Right? And then we're going to go, I don't know, another 10. Let's go 108. This will give you the best quality. You do it in little chunks instead of one big chunk. It is the best way to do it. Not perfect. I don't know if you can see, it's a little smoother. See, it's a little smoother. It's still a little fuzzy, but it's definitely a better way to go. And then go up to 200 now. A little better, but I mean, it's not 100%, but definitely that's a little bit. So if you have to interpolate, that's the way to do it. Okay, just go in 10% chunks when you do that. Okay? Back to our slides. Okay, resolution. Now, I know some of you, take pictures for social media. Some of you work with images for offset printing, large format, and a number of different things. So I'm going to try to touch on all of them a little bit. Offset printing, which is traditional printing for large press runs, requires 300 to 400. Your top printers will ask for a little extra res, especially if they're using FM screening, which makes it look like continuous tone. So that's your highest res. Large format, okay? We're talking, banners and, display graphics, that sort of thing. 100 to 125 PPI. Now, to reproduce type accurately, if you're going to scan it, it needs to be scanned in at 1,000 pixels per inch. That will give you what we call type quality, meaning that it looks like the type was set and it's not a scan. It's not going to fall apart. You need at least 1,000 pixels per inch. I do mine at 1,200, but 1,000 is fine. Large format for billboards, and I'm talking those big honkers that are like 40 feet wide by, 16 feet tall, 25. I said DPI. I should have said PPI. My mistake. 25 PPI is all you need. Why? Because you're viewing it so far away. And honestly, you're going to bump in when you're handling really large files. There are resolution ceilings in Photoshop where you can't go any bigger. And you'll run into those sometimes. Fine art reproductions on watercolor, paper, or canvas, 180 PPI. Don't let anybody tell you need any more than that. You do not. The screen resolution for standard computer monitors is 72 pixels per inch. So if you are just working on images for social media or, posting things or whatever, you don't need a lot of res, okay? In fact, you don't want a lot of res. You want just enough because the load time really slows down as you go bigger. So let's go back. Let's look at Nonito. Let's revert him. Can we revert? Yeah, we're going to revert Nonito. So when you want to start over, you can go right over here, and you can revert right there. Okay. All right, so let's say this image was going to be used just for social media. Look at that. It's good enough for 7.3 inches wide, right? If we're going to go offset printing, I'm not going to resample, but I'm going to redefine it. 300 pixels. It would only be 1.76 inches wide. So it really matters what your use of your photo is, how big it can be. 100 dpi for large format. You're looking 5.28 by 4 inches high. So it really matters, right? Pretty cool. And if you all have any questions on this, please email me or post on the Slack channel. It's a lot. It really is. And it's kind of, I don't know, it's out there. It really is. How do we manage all of this resolution stuff? What kind of framework can we have in our minds where we can grasp it? Well, think of your images as buckets of pixels. And you're just going to redefine how the pixels are in the bucket. So in other words, if it's a small bucket, the pixels may be certain depth, but if it's a bigger bucket, the pixels are going to be lower in the bucket. So it's the same number of pixels. It's just how you define them, how that bucket is defined. I say here, be aware of what size your image will be reproduced and on what. So again, whether it's screens only, whether it's going to be printed, offset, and large format, guess what? You better keep it 300 dpi. I also say here, beware, some monitors are higher resolution now. We have 4K monitors. That's 4,000 pixels wide. That's 95 pixels per inch. Okay. Some math is required. Let's take a look at some images in Photoshop. Okay, let's do that. All right, let's go look at this image. All right. Now, again, if we just wanted to redefine the size of the bucket, the size it's going to reproduce at, we're going to take off that resample. That resample is only to either interpolate, and that is to artificially create pixels, or to throw away pixels. Sometimes we may want to throw away pixels because they're too much. So let's say I redefine this as 300 pixels per inch. Now I have 11.6 by 7, and I go, I don't need that big. It's a 20, see up here, it says 23 megabyte file, tells you your file size, tells you your pixel size. I don't need it that big. I only need it 9 inches across. So I'm going to redefine it as 9. Well, I don't need 388. See, I went to 388 pixels. I'm going to resample that down to 300 pixels, right? It tells you right here, the new file size will be 13.9 megabytes as opposed to 23.4. So going down almost half size. So I wanted to show you something. Let's start from scratch. I'm going to redefine this as 200 pixels per inch. Again, our pixel count hasn't changed. Our image size has not changed. But what I want to show you, I'm going to take this from 200 to 400 pixels, and I want to show you what the file size does. So, right, it's 200 pixels. We're going to resample to 400. Right now, look at that. It goes from 23.4 to 93.4. So when you double your resolution, you quadruple your file size. Just something to be aware of, okay? When you double your resolution, you quadruple your file size. If you triple your resolution, it's 9 times. The file size will be 9 times, okay? Yeah, it really gets up there. So at any rate, let's go back. I didn't save that, so I'm gonna go back to the way the image was. And let's say we're gonna set this up for fine art reproduction. We're gonna go 180. Oh, I left that on. I didn't want that. We're gonna cancel that. My mistake. We're gonna define this now for 180 pixels for fine art. And we can print an image 19.4 by 13 inches. It's a pretty good size image. So there's a lot of information here. Just got to be aware of that resample button can be your best friend or a really big pain in the butt. So you got to make sure you know when it's on and when it's off. Okay? Hopefully that helps. Image content matters. The less detail in the image, the less resolution you need. So if you have a picture of like clouds or a flat color, you know what? You can get away with murder. You don't need much resolution. Let me define that for. Let's do a flat color and take a quick look. All right, so I'm going to create a new palette here. Command N. Yeah, I don't know. There we go. My computer's a little slow. All right, we'll just set up like a little. I want to do something kind of big. Okay, and we're gonna make a color. I'll just pick a color. Okay, and we're gonna just fill this. A foreground color. So there's a flat color, right? You don't need hardly any resolution for that. There's no detail. It's a flat color. So your image size, honestly, if you had to print this, .72 DPI offset printing at 29 inches, you could get away with it. Now the printer would freak out. He would not let you do that. But again, because there's no detail, you can upsample, right? With no loss of detail because there's no detail. So with flat colors, images of things like clouds, no detail, super soft, you can get away with very, very low res. I apologize, my computer's slow. I should have restarted it tonight, but I didn't. So look at that. So that shows you right there, and we can blow that up. There we are to the pixel level. They're all uniform. There's no artifacts. It looks great. Flat colors, you can get away with murder. Well, at least you can get away with low res. How's that? Pretty cool, right? So the content of the image matters. So if you need to cut corners, you can cut corners if it's super soft images, okay? Now conversely, if your image contains a lot of detail, like a page of a book or something that's a lot of detail, you need a lot of res. You need a little more than what everybody tells you need. If I was going to take a picture of a page of a book and reproduce it for offset printing, they might say, they need 300 DPI, PPI, sorry. I'm going to give them 400 to 500. And I'm not going to interpolate that. I mean, I'm going to give them a really nice high-res image so it's very crisp when it's printed. All right. Third point, the intended use of the photo matters too. So, if, again, you're doing those billboards, which I printed many, you can get away with murder. You're looking at the thing from a quarter mile away. You can't tell if there's a little bit of low res. And honestly, you can't create an image in Photoshop big enough for that billboard. Nobody can because of the limitations in Photoshop. So you have to give it at a lower resolution. That's what everybody does. 25 pixels per inch for a billboard is all they need. Another thing too, just to let you know, if you're printing on cloth and canvas, you can get away with a little less resolution because of the tooth of the cloth. It hides any sin, well, most sin of the low res file. Okay. Printing methods matter too. I asked the question, what if my output device is 2400 DPI? Well, some are. Some printers you can buy for your home, your print your photos on, very high resolution. The devices that image the printing plates, 2400 DPI. And the question is, don't I need images that are 2400 DPI or PPI? Actually, DPI because it's output. No. Printers use screening techniques. So they use dots. They break up the photos into a series of dots. They're called line screens, FM screening, all kinds of processes, dithering. And the different techniques use different resolution. You don't need the full resolution of the output device. So if an output device is 600, like in large format, they're typically 600 to 720 DPI machines. You only need to feed them 100 to 125 PPI, so you get very high quality. It's just the way it works. It's just the physics of what's going on. And if you want to make a cheat sheet, go back through this module, write yourself a cheat sheet out. That might be of benefit to you. If I get some time, actually, I'll put one together and post it to the Slack channel. Scans of line art need to be 1,000 pixels per inch to look crisp in offset printing. If the line art's being printed on an inkjet, 600 to 720 pixels per inch is just fine. Enlargements and reductions. I kind of hinted on that a little bit. If a 72 DPI image, I do it too, PPI image is being enlarged in page layout program, or when printed on a photo printer, double its size, the effective DPI is half of the original PPI, in this case 36. So if you blow that image up double, it drops the resolution in half. Conversely, if your images are being reduced, they tighten up and doubles the effective resolution. So that's a little bit of the math. So again, if you scan or capture at a certain size and you're putting in a page layout and you're enlarging it, you're losing resolution because of the enlargement of that image. Conversely, if you're reducing it, you're tightening it up and you need less resolution. Again, it's math. It's just the math. Here I go over the interpolation, which we did. It's possible to res it up. Again, the quality of the original pixels is important. If it has not been interpolated in your camera, it's awesome. That image of Nonito had been interpolated by the camera. That's why we had artifacts. So if you get good, clean pixels that have not been interpolated, then you have a good chance of doing a great job. There are programs out there that do that. They do claim that they enlarge without artifacts. The way they do it is in the increments of 10% at a time. They hide the process. But you can do it in Photoshop in a little increments at a time to get the resolution you need. But again, I say only do that as a last resort, right? It's only if you have to. You cannot get that image anywhere else. You can't reshoot it. You can't get it the way you need it. Then you can interpolate, okay? Warnings, things to watch out for. When you email files, some programs downsample to make the transmission go faster. Some programs warn you about it. So if you have an iPhone and you are emailing or texting an image out of your iPhone, it does give you the choice of what resolutions to send. And the largest one is the original file size. Some programs do it in the background where you don't realize they're downsampling it. So you'll send an image to somebody and they get a very low res version and everybody wonders why. Because your program, your email program, or whatever you're using to send it, thinks it's helping you out. Some services you use to store your images offline in the cloud also downsample your images. So you have to, when you're shopping for those services, make sure you ask the question or find out in the frequently asked questions section, do they downsample when you upload the files? Okay. When you save certain file types, it can affect the quality of the image. PSDs, TIFFs, and EPSs are safe. They do not downsample. They do not compress. They do not introduce any artifacts. They're totally safe. JPEGs can be good if you know what you're doing. If you save a JPEG, save it out as highest quality, and you're going to have a nice small image of very high quality when it's opened up. But you can't keep doing that over and over and over. So with JPEGs, it should be saved once with compression, and that's it. Um, and then they're fine. You won't notice any artifacts. Now the experts would tell you, yes, there's a little bit introduced, but you know what? Nobody's going to see it. I can barely see it. So just be aware of, and when you design your workflow, figure out how you want to work. TIFFs, PSDs, EPSs are bigger. PSDs and TIFFs are cool because when you save them, the layers are saved in with the file format. The way I work, when I save files, I save a copy of it with the layers, name it layered file, and then I flatten it, and then I save it as a flattened version with the name flattened in it. So I have two different versions of the same file. When you flatten it, of course, removing the layers, it becomes a lot smaller. Okay, some things to watch out for. And that's it for the module. Again, it was a lot of dry stuff tonight, but I felt that it's stuff you have to know to get past a certain skill level in Photoshop. You got to understand, some of the stuff we talked about so far, the color management stuff, the color spaces, and this resolution are a little on the dry side, but you have to have a basic understanding of it as you really start getting into things, because things happen. Like when you want to mix two different files together to do maybe a collage or whatnot, and the two images are different resolution, and you put them together in Photoshop, one gets downsampled, right, or upsampled, depending on whether you're putting low res into high or high into low. And you have to be aware of all this stuff's going on. Like all the resolutions have to match, the color spaces have to match, all that stuff has to match when we start putting images together. So you do have to understand, well, why? Why is that? Or what? I put those two images together, and the one now looks really soft and crappy, but by itself it looks fine. So, you have to be aware of this stuff. But, hey, if you have any questions, please email me or post a question to the Slack channel. I hope this helps. And I hope I presented it in a way that was informative and a little fun. It is a very dry subject. You can get super, super nerdy on it, very scientific. Lots going on here. And I might add, there is a couple companies that are working on compression where they compress raster images into a vector file format. One is in Broomfield, Colorado. Been working on it for 20 years. I hear they're very close. A lot of cool stuff happening with files. And anyway, have a great day or night, whichever it is. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being part of this course. And until next time, we'll catch you later.